Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from sortofinteresting.com and today you are joining me on board good old narrowboat Abel's Ark for a chat about the day-to-day and week-to-week narrowboat life experience. And this is something that I've really sat down and read some comments recently on a lot of my videos where I've been talking about winter and the boat life experience during the winter months. And people have been saying, what on earth do you do to stop getting bored all the time and things like that. And I thought, you know what, I want to talk just about boat life more generally throughout all of the year and some of the ways that it differs to land life and some of the many ways that it's exactly the same as land life. As many people may know, I've said in the past, probably many times, too many times, boat life is just normal life that floats. And it's even more normal now for me that I'm on board a bigger, far more comfortable boat. So, first of all, let's talk about the really boring stuff that's going to make everybody switch off and stop watching this video immediately. So, think of life in general. You wake up in the morning, maybe get dressed, have something to eat, do whatever you're doing in the day, have something to eat again, and then go to sleep again. And obviously there's a huge amount of crossover with land life and boat life in those sort of things. So I often think that there's some people who may view boat life as if it's this totally radical different way of life, and it certainly can be in some elements, but then equally there's always a basic level of all of life that everybody in all walks of life goes through, the certain sequences in a day in most cases. So some of the more normal things, so obviously things like cleaning and sweeping up and dusting and stuff like that, obviously takes hardly any time on a little boat like this. I mean, this is a bigger boat than I used to have. This is 45 foot, but that's still small compared to a lot of the boats that are out there on the canal. And so anyway, some of your things like, for example, I'd say something like the coal fire may be a little bit more of an issue on the boats. Now, I can keep it running well overnight now, and I can get it throwing out almost too much heat at some points, and maybe not enough if I haven't balanced it right again. It's a living, breathing thing almost, the fireplace. It's not so much keeping the fire going that's the issue, it's when it comes time to clean it out. So obviously you've got the ash that needs to come out of it, but in a smaller confined area than maybe in a nice big living room in a house. Obviously, anybody who's emptied a fire will know that the ash from a fire somehow it turns almost into a mist, and there's just so many miniature, absolutely microscopic fine particles that as you only have to so much as look at it, I swear, and all this dust starts to move about everywhere. So obviously in a confined space that's not particularly nice, and particularly if you do something silly like in the past I've on more than one occasion clipped my dustpan and brush with my foot and sent all of this dust everywhere, and it's particularly unpleasant, I think, and I don't like the idea that I'm breathing it in and stuff. And it's just a normal thing. There's people who have houses with coal fires and have done for many hundreds and hundreds, well, thousands of years people have been using fire to keep warm. So I'm sure that many years ago somebody in their cave somewhere certainly had the same issue where they'd be using, I don't know, half a twig to brush out the fire ash and stuff, going, whoa, what on earth's this all about? I hope that one day civilization creates boats so some lad in Shropshire can have the same problem as me. What on earth? Even I don't know how I get on some of these tangents. Anyway, back on topic. As I say, you've got all of those sort of normal things that cross over from boat life to land life that may be slightly different but not necessarily a huge difference. The real joy of boat life to me is being out in these rural places, and that's sort of what makes the days so good for me. Admittedly, windy, raining out there right now, not a particularly nice environment to go out and play in or to even open the windows and look out on, and it's just a grey, misty day with rain falling down the windows, and it doesn't buoy you up and make you go, oh yes, this is boat life, yeah, this is great. But then when you're out here in the middle of summer or on the really crisp, cold, clear winter mornings and evenings with beautiful sunrises and sunsets and different random bits of nature and herons and things going on, maybe a kingfisher darts past, when you have those moments, that's what I love about boat life, and that's where it can be very different to a lot of my experience of land life, when you've got just these incredible experiences from just the natural world around you, and being able to obviously untie your boat, move up and down the canal wherever, well, most places that you want to go, and then maybe moor up for a day here, move on for a week, move on from there for 3 days, whatever. You've got that freedom to change your environment as often as you want, as long as it's no longer than 2 weeks in one place. But yeah, I'm just going to have a quick drink. Just to completely interrupt the flow of the video, wow, that echoes a lot stronger than I'd anticipated. Let's move through the bridge slightly. Right, how's this sounding? Hopefully that's a little bit better. So just to interrupt the video a little bit here, I think that a good example of, or a couple of good examples of what boat life can be like in terms of the day-to-day experience can be summed up in a simple thing like, last week I had to go babysitting for my sister, so I woke up on the boat, I caught the bus, and then I babysat, and then I came back to the boat. The most normal day, the boat had absolutely zero impact on how that day went, other than obviously having to travel to the boat rather than to somewhere on a street in a town somewhere. However, in the exact opposite element of that, some of you may have seen I attempted a live stream on an actual moving boat trip at one point a week or so ago. It was a total disaster, total failure, so we'll forget that. Sorry, it sounds, if these water bits dripping in the background, it keeps sounding like someone's coming round there. Anyway, back on topic. So my friend came out to the boat, we untied the ropes and had ourselves a little boat trip. Not a huge trip, just a mile or so, a little bit further I think it was. And then moored up in a beautiful place out on the canal as always. And that itself is just a lovely thing to do, and obviously something that you wouldn't be able to do if you were in a house and couldn't untie your ropes and move down the road a little bit. But it's one of those elements that's where a day on boat life can be completely and utterly different. So we, as I say, had a little trip down the canal, and we stayed on board, had something to eat for our dinner, and played a classic board game called Carcassonne. I'll at some point I'll do a video on it because I really love it. It's a fascinating little game. And then we had a wander out onto the canal, and well, on the towpath rather than the canal. Sorry if the birds are kicking off too much in this little clip. And so we revisited some of the places that I used to moor up for winter on board in years gone by, and then we ended up going to the model shop and buying a few bits and pieces for my model railway while we were there. And then in the end he got the bus from a completely different place, probably multiple miles away from where he'd actually got off the bus to come to the boat. And so he got the bus back into Oswestry, and then I wandered back down the towpath to the boat. And the whole day it was beautiful, it was filled with the outdoors. It was a rainy day still, it wasn't the most beautiful weather like this sort of day that we've got now, but it was still a fantastic day because we were boating, we were out in these beautiful rural places. And again, that's the difference, that sometimes a day of boat life can be fantastic and it can be very boaty. Other times, and I'd say the majority of time for many people who live on boats, living on a boat is, well, it's just like, as I've said, it's like living in a small, long flat and being able to move around. As with everything else on board a boat, the night time can obviously vary depending on where your boat is and who your neighbours might be. And it's something that I've found in general, because of my love of these rural places, it can be an incredibly peaceful, almost entirely silent experience in many occasions when I'm out and about. And in fact, even my marina life experience was a very quiet, peaceful place in the evenings, as there weren't any major roads or railways or anything at all like that around in the, well, anywhere near the place. So obviously, being out in the middle of nowhere, you expect it to be peace and quiet and all of that sort of rural charm and beauty and the rest of it. However, sometimes the rural nature can cause a bit of a disturbance in the evening, and you can have animals or owls overhead in trees. That's happened on multiple occasions. And there's one famous time when I was on Narrowboat Tilly up by Blakemere on the outskirts of Ellesmere, and there was either a bird or an owl or some sort of giant bird up in a tree that, and there's no other way I can say this, was every so often pooing on the back of the boat. So every few minutes I could just hear it, and I was thinking, what on earth is this? And I thought, is there a squirrel knocking something out of the tree? And this was the middle of the night. I'm talking small hours of the morning. And in the end, I had to go out of the boat, untie the ropes, and just move a few feet down the canal, because when I realised what it was, I couldn't settle, because I'm thinking, oh, the back of the boat's getting absolutely destroyed here, as it was just constantly bang, another bit, bang, another bit. And, well, again, totally random, totally ridiculous, but that's just another random element of boat life. And I did a video about that, which I'll leave a link in the description to, as it's a ridiculous topic, but again, a humorous thing. But in all seriousness, though, something as simple as currently I'm moored under a couple of trees, and it's the autumn, so there's barely any leaves on them, and, well, if any leaves left at all. But because the night before last, or last night actually, was a very windy night, and there was lots of rain and drizzle and all the rest of it, even though the wind wasn't affecting the boat too much, because I've got a slight bit of a hill over the canal from me, which is giving me a bit of protection, the fact that it was wet and raining meant that obviously there's moisture building up on the tree branches and stuff, and every time the wind had a good old gust, it would knock all the large drops off onto the roof of the boat. And it might sound ridiculous, but that's the sort of thing that has a surprising impact when you're in bed in the middle of the night and it's all silent, and then suddenly it's just all suddenly going and so on. It's very disturbing, and then I find I have trouble sleeping if there's any little sounds and stuff around. So things like that you're then lying in bed and you're trying to go to sleep, but you're constantly waiting for the next drop. And it's the same if you're more under any power cables. You can have water droplets build up on them, and then they can be really high above the boat and come down, and you're just there in the middle of the night, and then suddenly you've got... And it's like, oh, no, now I'm focused on that instead of going to sleep. And equally, I mean, just simple things like, say, like owls and stuff like that. And at one point I was sat on Narrowboat Tilly, I saw a cat run across the outside, on the water side of the boat. This cat had been walking around on the little gunnel, the little step beneath the windows on the boat. And again, just random little things. But in all honesty, unless you're in a city or a more built-up area or moored up by a main sort of either railway line or motorway, something like that, you're very often probably going to have a very peaceful experience in the evenings, and that's just a basic fact of it. Obviously, during the summer months, or if you're mooring up amongst other boats and other people, you might get people who will leave their generators or engines running really late at night, which can certainly be annoying. But as I've often thought, in the worst case scenario, if you're not the sort of person who's going to get out there and start challenging people about it, which is not my way of thinking, I'm like, well, I can move tomorrow, or they'll probably move tomorrow, and then I might never see them ever again, ever. So no big deal. But there's a lot of different things that can and can't happen. Realistically, though, you're more likely to have a peaceful night, obviously depending on where you decide to moor. So boat life itself can vary greatly, and if you, say, live in a marina all year round, then you might have all the services right on your doorstep, have a small town nearby where you can go in and do all your shopping, and it's effectively just like living in a flat, I suppose. Whereas, if you're someone who's cruising hundreds of miles a year, then you could potentially be calling different places and cities your home, and have all sorts of different things to go and do in and around your general environment. And obviously as well, you're out boating for many hours a week potentially. So that can be completely different to a land life or a marina life experience. However, obviously, if you're in a sort of middle sort of situation where you might moor up somewhere for the winter months or moor up somewhere for the summer months, then you can have a bit of everything thrown in. And as I say, being able to moor up in some of these amazing rural locations is a great element of boat life. But for a continuous cruiser it can also be a little bit of an issue, especially during the winter months where you might have to plan more to make sure you don't run out of coal, or if you're on a canal that's likely to freeze up in certain conditions, then obviously you're going to want to make sure that you're not moored up in the middle of nowhere and then find, oh no, I've got to walk 5 miles, maybe more, to get any supplies on board through knee-deep snow on the towpath and stuff like that. But I would say personally that during the year just past, I suppose, I've experienced a good variety of boat life experiences. So, for example, over the summer when I'd first bought the boat, I had jobs going on that I needed to get done on board, and I decided to pay for a few months for a marina mooring. And although I didn't admittedly spend much time on the boat in the marina, and I would be going out for a week here or 2 weeks there and maybe a little bit more in some cases, and I was out and about half the time just paying for an empty stretch of water in the marina while I was miles away down the canal, which didn't feel great, I'll admit. But in all seriousness, that's a simple thing, that having that place where I could take the boat back to if I wanted to, especially during the really busy summer months up here on the Llangollen Canal, it was nice to have that sort of security, knowing that I could go in there out of harm's way. And particularly over the summer when my friends and family are going away on holiday and stuff, so I have to go on pet feeding duty. So, for example, when my dad went away on holiday for a week, I went to his house and stayed there for the week and fed the cat and the rabbits and the fish and stuff like that. And I had the boat just left in the marina, and I had that peace of mind knowing that there were people around who could check up on it and see what was what and just keep an eye on things. And then, over the winter months, I've decided to come out of the marina and just cruise around and stop at some of my favourite places that I've moored up over the years on my previous narrowboat. So, now that I'm out and about here, that changes things a little bit and makes it more different to everyday narrowboat and land life. Because obviously you've got to think about making sure that you're keeping within the cruising rules of moving every 2 weeks at the absolute maximum. Then you've got to think about, as you're moving, like I say, making sure that you're topping up with water, emptying toilets and stuff like that in sensible times, that you're not going to get yourself stranded and then start to panic. And similar, things like coal for the fire and wood for the fire, making sure that you've got plenty of that in stock, and when you're moored up close to a little village where you can easily get supplies, making the absolute most of that. Or in my case recently, I was moored up about a 10-minute walk from a bus stop, and there's some places where I moor up within probably a 30-second walk of a bus stop, to be honest. So at those sort of places, that's when I try and stock up with food and long life food and dried goods, that sort of stuff. So your noodles and pastas and spaghettis and tins of things and vegetables and soup and stuff like that, so that I can hop on the bus, go into town, go into Oswestry or Wrexham or maybe Shrewsbury, have a wander around, a look there, chuck a load of food in my backpack, maybe a bag or two under my arms, and then get on the bus, and then you've only got a short walk down to the boat. So again, if you go further up the canal and then you find that you're stuck there for any reason, if there's an unexpected closure during the winter months, if there's trees blown over or anything, you're then thinking, whew, I'm certainly glad that I've got this food on board, rather than thinking, oh, it's a bit of a longer walk now to walk for 40 minutes to the nearest shop. But you get my general gist there. And those are the elements where these beautiful rural locations on a canal like the Llangollen can be the blessing and a curse. And it's really why you don't get many people in the grand scheme of things more up here during the winter months, considering how popular this canal is during the summer months. I think at this point I've spoken way too much already, so I'm simply going to wrap this video up and say thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll subscribe and check my old videos, hit the notification bell and all that sort of stuff, and I hope you'll enjoy what you find on this channel. And of course, check out Sort of Interesting Chains to see what's in those boxes very soon. Anyway, I suppose I better do all the plugs. Please do feel free to check out my other videos, as I just mentioned. If you check the links in the description of this video or visit narrowboatbooks.com, you'll find my Amazon page where you'll find all of my short books about boat life available for the Kindle, as a paperback, and even one of them as a short audiobook. And also, feel free to add me on Facebook and Twitter. I post a lot of general boat life pictures and scenery and, well, just general bits and bobs, I suppose. Until the next time though, check those links in the description, subscribe, go wild, but most importantly, keep it boat worthy, keep it interesting, have an absolutely fantastic day, and of course my friends, farewell.